Hello, good evening. Welcome back to the Sportskeeda Football Show with me, Shane Burns. It's episode 2 this week, following last week's success. And we're joined by mainly the same panel, plus one. Sam Cox is back with us.
Hello.
We've also Arjun Pradeep.
Hey.
With Tom Scholes.
Hello.
And joining us also this evening is Josh Chalice.
Hey guys.
So guys, busy week of Premier League football. There wasn't that many goals actually. I didn't know if any of you know, but it was the third lowest scoring week of the season so far. 9 teams failed to score. But I think we should start at what happened at the Emirates Stadium. It was the first game of the weekend. Arsenal ran out 2-0 winners over Hull. Josh, I'll throw this one out to you. Were you surprised by Wenger's team selection?
Not really, no. A lot of people expected him to make some changes, but I don't really feel that Arsenal are in a position to do that. Obviously, Bayern Munich this week, but I think if we went out of the Champions League, it'd be disappointing, but not massively surprising. We can't afford to take any sort of risks in the Premier League with the top 4 battle as it was. So I wasn't surprised. I think that Gibbs deserved his chance with Monreal looking quite shaky this season. Ox at centre midfield was excellent once again, and there wasn't really too much we could do there with Xhaka still suspended and the injuries. El Nene not quite ready after coming from the African Cup of Nations. So I think the team pretty much picked itself.
That's quite interesting. Tom, Josh mentioned that El Nene wasn't quite ready. Do you agree, figuring that he's just had maybe 3 or 4 weeks of international football, consistent training? It was competitive in the African Cup of Nations. Do you think he was justified of maybe starting?
I think it was a risk, and as Josh said, they didn't need to take any risks. Well, they couldn't take any risks, rather. To throw him in from the AFCON, he's travelled over a few continents to throw him back into Premier League football. I think at this stage might have been just too much for him. Maybe next week, or in the Cup this coming week, I think that would be the right place for him.
Okay, it's a fair point, I suppose, and Wenger's team selection was truly justified in the end. Sam, biggest talking point of the game came just before the first half came to a close. It was Alexis Sanchez's goal. Talk me through it. Do you feel that Clattenburg was either right to allow the goal? We know it was handball, but do you think that his vision or the speed of the play could have maybe prevented, maybe seen him? I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. Do you think that he could have basically given the right decision that we all see afterwards with replays, or do you think that it was an unlucky mistake by him?
I think it's the sort of mistake that's natural. It's hard that you get this sort of twisted in this nonsense by some of the TV coverage afterwards about whether he did it deliberately or not, which I personally don't really think is relevant in that situation. I mean, obviously he's not going to deliberately punch the ball in. He'd have to be an idiot to do that. But it's still, the ball was going...
Or Diego Maradona.
Or Diego Maradona. Which he obviously didn't do it deliberately, but for me it shouldn't be a goal, and I think Clattenburg is the sort of thing that's going to happen, unfortunately. But I don't think he can take too much blame for it. It's just a sort of natural mistake.
I think it's one of the ones that could have gone either way, really. It's 50-50. I think you'd look back and you'd say, oh, it's handball, but I think if the referee was to call it up, you'd say, that's harsh, because there was no way to move. But I think the thing that annoyed me the most, because obviously I was away this weekend, so I caught the highlights later on. I think it was NBC that I caught the highlights on, and they were like, oh, Alexis Sanchez, handball, shouldn't have counted. And then later on, when Klukas got sent off for handling the ball on the line, they said that he was unfortunate to be in that situation. It was like, well, how can one be a handball and not a goal, and the other one be unfortunate when you're clearing it off the line. So I think that sometimes there is the general sense of, what can we try and make a controversy out of here?
Definitely.
Arjun, in the build up to the goal, Arsenal were pressing and pressing and pressing. Hull had a few moments of almost half chances, I would say. Do you feel if Arsenal hadn't got that goal just before half time, they would have struggled to maintain that momentum going into the second half?
I do. I think that Hull were unlucky. I just think that Arsenal didn't merit the goal. So, of course, Hull are going to feel hard on, but I just think that it's just one of those games, where you don't know what to do, because the officials made a call that just pretty much took the steam out of Hull City, but I think even after the goal they fought really well, and they tried to keep up with a certain amount of momentum, but they couldn't get through. So I just think they were unlucky.
Okay, you mentioned about the officials and things like that. Tom, were Arsenal lucky in the second half? Should they have had a red card? I think you know the incident I'm referring to here as well.
The Kieran Gibbs one.
Yeah.
Where Markovic is on throw.
Uh-huh.
I think if it was a closer into the goal, I think he would have had serious questions. But because he was about 25, 30 yards away, I think that's what saved him. It wasn't too bad of a challenge. It was, if he'd sived him down and completely wiped him out, then, obviously closer, straight red all day, because he's stopping a goal scoring opportunity. But there was still a lot for him to do. I know it was a long run. I can't remember if there was any defenders in and around him, but I think the distance away from goal and the actual challenge itself saved Gibbs from actually getting a red card on that one.
But do you think that happens if that was at the KCOM Stadium? Do you think that's a decision that goes consistently for the home teams? Like, we've seen them given before, and if Gibbs was sent off, it would have been. I personally think it would have been justified. So do you think that that's almost one of those decisions? Sam, I'll ask you. Do you think that that's one of those decisions that's a typical home team decision you would not generally get, like?
Naturally, yeah. Rightly or wrongly, those sort of decisions, ones that are very touch and go, will go with the home team most of the time, and that's just the way it is, unfortunately. But I think you're probably right. I think if that's at the KCOM, then it goes the other way.
Yeah, I personally remember an incident. Maybe it was the year Man City won the league in 2014, and I remember Vincent Kompany being sent off actually against Hull. It was only 8 minutes into it, and it was a situation very similar to that. He had a tussle with Jelavic, but it was in fact Jelavic who tugged him down. But he was at least 30 yards out from goal, and he was still given a red card. So, I know it's a couple of years ago, but it's still a big lack of consistency when it comes to making these decisions or continuing on making these decisions. I'm gonna move on.
If I'm not wrong, I think that for this particular season, I think FIFA changed the rules. So for every last man challenge doesn't have to be a necessary red card.
If there is no intent, if the referee deems
it's not
that
a deliberate foul.
If the referee deems that he played the ball, then he can. It's only a yellow card.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah.
So look. Moving on to the second half, Josh, were you impressed with Arsenal's second half performance? You mentioned Oxlade-Chamberlain in particular. Do you think that the second goal was justified, or do you feel Hull were nearly hard done by in not to get anything out of the game?
Yeah, to be fair, I'd have to say that Hull did deserve to get something out of the game. Both goals were. I mean, the second one was right at the death. They were unlucky to have the first one go against them. Obviously, the Gibbs decision as well. They would feel really hard done by. But to be honest, I think that Hull will be really happy with their last three games. Coming into a run against Liverpool, Man United and Arsenal, to take 4 points, they'll be filled with that. And I think that's going to do their push for safety wonders. Whereas for Arsenal, I just think it shows their defensive vulnerability once again. Yes, Hull drew with Man United and they beat Liverpool, but I cannot remember the last time I've seen Arsenal perform well across all the board, and I think it would honestly have to be Chelsea back in September. I think since then Arsenal have just sort of lacked the control. I think the telling thing is, even when we beat Ludogorets 6-0 in the Champions League, they had some big chances early on. And if you've got a side like Ludogorets and Hull carving apart your defence, that's a big problem, especially as you don't look at the defence and see weak links. You've got international players there, really experienced players, so there's no reason for that to happen. So I just worry for Arsenal for the rest of the season with how close it is.
Fair point. You mentioned about the defence as well. You know, they're all good players. Some of them are on the cusp of even world class ability. Do you not think that it's holding midfield that continues to be an issue, especially when you have Pogba for United, you have Yaya Toure and Fernandinho for Manchester City, you have Kante and Matic for Chelsea. You don't have that steel and grit that even Tottenham have Wanyama and Dembele. Arsenal are clearly missing that.
Yeah, I think we are, but I also think that the coaching can come down to it as well. Aaron Ramsey was fantastic for Wales at the European Championships, hasn't really excelled this season. Oxlade-Chamberlain has only just started to have his chance in the centre of midfield. Jack Wilshere obviously away on loan at Bournemouth. Cazorla injured. Xhaka hasn't quite settled in yet. I think that we have the players there, and this is the most frustrating thing as an Arsenal fan this season, is you look at Chelsea's squad and you'd probably say they can match each other, if not edging in Arsenal's favour. I think Chelsea have a squad that's perhaps a bit weaker, but their coaching and their management gets the best out of them, whereas Arsenal have a squad that really should be, in the past 2 seasons, should be winning the league at least once, but hasn't, just because of silly errors in the coaching and just like a lack of style, really.
So this, basically, to concur with what Josh was saying, that it's almost a typical Arsenal performance. You know, they were almost lucky against maybe rejuvenated Hull side, but Tom, Arsenal finally got their reward. Well, they're somewhat rewarded with minutes to go, and they got the penalty. Any doubt over the penalty? Definite decision from Clattenburg.
Stonewall penalty. He's on the line. He handballs it.
Red card, everything.
Yeah, I can't find a fault with any of it. It was stopping a goal scoring opportunity with his hand. Yeah, I'd love to expand on more, but that's it.
Sam, do you think it was almost stupid from Klukas to handle the ball? If the ball was going in with minutes to go, Arsenal were still going to win the game if he had saved it regardless. But their next 2 games are home to Burnley, home to Swansea. He's going to be missing for them. Do you think that's the naivety or lack of experience of a relegation battle creeping in there?
I think it's just an instinct thing, isn't it? I mean, it looked really stupid afterwards, but there's not much in that. It was quite a close shot, wasn't it? There's not much he can do, really. It's a shame the hole that he's missing, but I don't think he has time to try and get himself out of the way or think he needs to get out of the way.
Fair enough. Adrian, were you impressed with Hull in general? What do you think? Do you think that they can stay up, especially under Marco Silva? And do you see glimpses of, there's clear improvement, but what do you see is the most impressive thing about this Hull side, going off Saturday's performance?
First off, I watched Marco Silva's Olympiacos quite a bit, because they also played Juventus and then Arsenal, and they beat both of them in the Champions League. So, I mean, this is someone who's a pretty good manager, and what he's done in the past 1 month or so in the Premier League is very impressive. And I think that they have it in them to stay up. I think that it shouldn't be that much of a problem, considering the way that they're playing. I mean, there are certain teams, that once they concede a goal, they just surrender. But that's not Hull. They keep fighting, and that's something that you want to see in most of the teams. But that's something that Hull have naturally. So I think you should give the credit to the manager. But just coming back to Arsenal's defensive issue, there are two ways of solving it, and we have seen the same issue repeated over and over again. Like certain defenders, like Koscielny, I don't know, like I just think that they don't have a proper defensive fundamental base at all. They don't sense danger. They just rush out to, and they lose battles, one-on-one battles. And you saw what Koscielny and with Markovic, he lost it, and they were in trouble immediately. So there's two ways of going around it. Either you play a system that doesn't highlight their mistakes or their errors, or you buy players who are better defensively. And Arsenal, it's the same problem over and over again. That's costing them a lot of games.
Josh, do you have anything to say to that?
I wish I could disagree, but I don't really. I think the problem is, and I've always thought this with Koscielny, is that he doesn't stand out as a leader. He doesn't stand out as someone who can lead the defence and make sure everything is organised. And I think that is probably why we gave Per Mertesacker a contract extension when he hasn't played all season, because he is a leader, and we need that in our defence. Now, sure, Per Mertesacker might not play more than 5 games between now and the end of next season, but we need that. We need that defensive discipline, and we need the experience, and I think that's what's lacked, really.
Guys, in one word, I'll go through each of you. Sam, I'll start with you. Do you think Arsenal will finish in the top 4?
No.
Tom?
Yes.
Arjun?
Oh, yeah, I do.
And Josh?
Yes.
Who's going to miss out? We'll come to that, actually. Save all that. We'll come to that as we're going to run through all the top 5 or 6 teams anyway over the course of the show. So we'll come to the rest of the teams. Be interesting to see who you all come up with. Guys, going to move on to another heavyweight clash that occurred this weekend. It was Liverpool Spurs. It was one heck of a game, I have to admit. It was quite high paced. For Spurs though, how could Pochettino not envisage what was going to happen to Ben Davies up against Sadio Mane? Tom, I'm going to throw this one at you. It was a bloodbath. Surely he could have seen that with his experience. Normally he's quite tactically adept as well.
I remember when the lineups were announced, and I sat there and I looked at it, and it was Ben Davies against Sadio Mane, and you knew what was going to happen. Even before the lineups were announced, you knew Mane was back, you knew who was going to play, and you knew that Liverpool were going to target that left-hand side. So what should he have done? Protect the left-hand side. Put some of the midfielders onto the left-hand side to give Davies the protection, to double up on Mane and to cancel him out. Because on the other side, Kyle Walker could deal with pace. He could deal with whoever Liverpool threw at him. Ben Davies was torn to pieces. And he had a poor game, and a lot of blame was put on him. But I kind of feel sorry for him in a way, because Pochettino and Spurs didn't recognise what was going to happen pre-game and during the game. It took him too long to sort it out because Son was on that left side and he just didn't track back. There was about 20 yards between him and Davies, even more at times when Mane was running at him, and Davies just couldn't deal with him. So I don't know how he didn't spot it pre-game, knowing what Pochettino and his team are like and how they watch a game. I don't know how they didn't do it, how they didn't spot it.
It's quite interesting. Sam, and that mustn't be the only worry for Pochettino when you see that Harry Kane was almost outfought and outwitted by Lucas.
But they didn't really get the ball through to him, though, did they? It was that Ali and Ericsson don't get into the game, and if they don't get into the game, then you don't see, well, Ali Ericsson or Son or whoever's playing behind Kane. If they're not getting the ball, then the ball doesn't go straight up to Kane. He's not got the pace to really damage a team on his own. And it is a bit of a concern. He's managed to have a relatively decent run of goal scoring, but without seemingly looking quite as good as he did at points last year, I thought.
But you said that there's no service being provided for him. How can you explain the fact that he's losing headers, he's losing 50-50 balls constantly to Lucas? Surely that part of the game. Kane's rough and readiness against Lucas is a lot smaller than him, and he's even slower than Kane again. Surely that must be worrying for Pochettino.
Yeah, a little, and I think some of it will go down to burnout again. That Janssen's not worked out at all, even when he had a run in the side earlier in the year, and they don't really feel like they can rest Kane properly. I don't know what his numbers are per minute, but he has to work so hard alone up front that I just don't think he gets enough rest.
Well, Spurs haven't played in the Champions League since November, so I'm not sure. I find that a little bit difficult. They're only playing one game a week nearly. Okay, they've had the odd FA Cup game here and there, but I think that the wheels are slowly starting to come off Spurs' bus. Arjun, we talked about David Mane up against Davis. Do you think it was a good play from Liverpool on both goals, or do you think it was poor defending from Spurs?
It was a matter of incidents in a small period that cost Tottenham the game. But the main problem that happened in that small period was that they were out battled and intensity. Liverpool played with a lot of intensity in that small period. You can talk about Davis getting done by Mane, but the problems that happened were, for example, like Wanyama. I think he gave away the ball quite easily. Before that, Kane lost his battle with Lucas, and then Alderweireld goes in committed and he loses his battle, and that kept on happening for a period of 5-10 minutes. And I mean, in that time, Mane got 2 goals, and I think the game was pretty much done. Of course, Tottenham could have pulled one back with Son, but it didn't happen. But I think that they came out in the second half with more intensity, but they should have started that way right from the first minute, and they didn't, and they paid for it.
Okay, last week all three of us discussed Jurgen Klopp and criticising him for his one win in 9, or that being it only against Plymouth and things like that. So, Josh, you weren't on the show last week. Do you feel now that following Liverpool's victory on Saturday, they're now maybe back on track for maybe even the top 4, or maybe, well, probably not a title, but at least the top 4? Do you think that the wheels are back in motion?
No, not really. I think that there's far more problems to fix, and I think the biggest thing is if you look at the top 6, I think that Liverpool undoubtedly have the worst squad out of them all. The win against Tottenham was great, and it was the result that they needed, but Liverpool have a massive run of fixtures coming up now. They've got a bit of a break with the FA Cup, which is obviously not in Champions League. They're not in the international break. But in the next 5 games, they play Arsenal, Man City and Everton. And that is huge. And with the way Liverpool have been in 2017, I cannot see those games going favourably for them. And they can't afford to drop points to any of their rivals. So I think the damage has already been done.
Wow, okay. It's quite interesting, especially when you consider the impressive start they had at the start of the season. I'm sure a lot of our Liverpool fan listeners won't be too happy with that, but Tom, is this Spurs side slowly starting to crumble? As in, has this Tottenham side peaked?
No, I don't think it has. I think this weekend's performance was an off day. I mean, they haven't been top form recently. Probably, I'd say, since the Man City draw a few weeks ago.
They weren't in top form then either.
Since that game onwards, they haven't been on top form. They've still somehow managed to get results out of it. But this game on Saturday that just went, there was little bits about it that went wrong, and when the first goal went in, it fell to pieces. Now, that comes with it was a horrible game from a Spurs perspective, because there were easy mistakes to fix. There were stupid mistakes, but they've got a nice run of fixtures now, where I think it's about a run of 9, where you'd probably argue the 2 hardest games are Everton at home and Burnley away. So I think they're good enough to get points on the board, and I think it's a maturity thing within the big games, where they come into it with a let's not lose attitude, as opposed to a let's go out and win attitude. Because when they went 1-0 down, you almost got the feeling it was a case of when are Liverpool going to score next, when are Spurs going to let them in next. It was a mentality issue, but I don't think they're Spursing it up just yet.
I'd have to disagree.
It's
not just an Arsenal fan sticking the knife in here. I think this has been coming. You mentioned that they haven't been the best since the Man City game. You've got to remember that Man City were absolutely robbed in that game, for starters. And then you scrape through in the FA Cup against Wickham, skin of your teeth, draw with Sunderland, narrowly beat Middlesbrough, and now lose to Liverpool. And although on paper their run of fixtures may look favourable, they've got to travel to Palace and Swansea and Leicester in the next 6 weeks. Now, all 3 of those teams are woeful at the moment, and Spurs would be expected to pick up points. But on the road, it's not as easy as that, as shown with the draw of Sunderland. And I think they really could start to get unstuck.
Okay. Sam Arjun, I think we should leave him to it, no? The reason I asked you that, Tom, right, and I forgot all about this. Spurs play their home games next season at Wembley. And Spurs' away record against the top teams has been abysmal. Spurs' home record against the top teams has been respectively good. A lot of that is down to the fact it's White Hart Lane, smaller pitch, shall we say. You know, that proper intense style and get in your face style. I think personally that this Spurs team is about to peak, and you're going to start seeing the decline. You're going to start seeing Pochettino maybe go to Real Madrid and Hugo Lloris. That's just my own opinion.
That's fair enough. I think the Wembley point, after this campaign in the Champions League, I'm worried for Spurs there, because they looked out the fish out of water there, and I think it was the same problem West Ham had at the beginning of the when they were in the London Stadium. There was no atmosphere, but they weren't adjusted to the size of the pitch. At the Bowling Ground, it was tight, it was compact, and they knew how to play there, but they couldn't get to grips with a wider pitch, a bigger pitch. And it sounds stupid because these are professional footballers, and how can you not adapt to a bigger pitch? But take Spurs for example, they're used to the small compact style of White Hart Lane, where they know the fullbacks can bomb on and they can come back within seconds because it's so small. At Wembley, it's longer, it's wider. Teams can exploit that because that's how Spurs play, and I think that's going to be the undoing of them next season.
Interesting. Okay, guys, these 2 teams, top 4. Sam?
I think Spurs are more likely to get it than Liverpool.
Tom?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. I think Spurs will do it. Liverpool will just miss out.
Arjun?
Yeah, I agree. I think Spurs are going to make it into the top 4, but Liverpool, it's pretty hard.
Josh?
I think Liverpool will miss out. As for Spurs, I think the next few weeks are decisive, but I think they will just edge it.
If you're asking me personally, I think that both these teams will not be in the Champions League next season.
Controversial.
Very.
Controversial.
Very. And I'll explain why as we move on. I think Arsenal will edge it. Arsenal always seem to find a way. But yeah, and Chelsea obviously will. Maybe, yeah, if they continue slightly a little bit, if they improve slightly a little bit better. Okay, guys, talking about Chelsea. Actually, I'm going to move on to the Chelsea and Burnley game. Bloody hell, this was quite physical and tense. Sam, when Conte fielded that team, were you, as a Chelsea fan, pretty content with how he? See what I did there. Pretty content with how he lined out that his starting 11.
Yeah, he was definitely all he was going to do. I know there's the standard Chelsea fans complaining about Fabregas not playing, which is fair enough. I mean, he's a wonderful footballer, but if he's not going to play him in home games, he's definitely not going to play him away at Turf Moor. It was a pretty ugly game, in all honesty. Chelsea could have been 2 or 3 up in the first 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Burnley found their feet, and from then on, it was a lot of kind of clumsy football from both teams. I thought Chelsea weren't particularly free-flowing, but defensively they looked okay, even with David Luiz hobbling around.
You mentioned that on Twitter, actually, about it being an ugly game. People were like, oh, what a great advertising for the Premier League. It wasn't really, was it?
I really hope that's not how they advertise the Premier League. That was for me. It was an advert of a lot of what is wrong with English football. There was a lot of clumsy tackling and just hoofing the ball around from both teams. It was pretty painful to watch. Not quite as bad as Stoke Crystal Palace on Saturday, but neither of them were great.
Okay, we'll talk about Chelsea's goal. I'm sure nearly everybody predicted Chelsea to go on and kick on and score a couple of goals and come away with a comfortable win once they'd scored. Arjun, what you make of Pedro's touch just to take that ball away from, I think it was Michael Keane, just before he slotted it past Tom Heaton?
Both the goals were of amazing quality, you know, especially like the free kick from Brady. That was amazing. But yeah, Pedro, like, we know he has a lot of technique and he can take his chances when he gets them. I mean, we have seen him do that a lot for Barcelona. We also saw that under Mourinho. And this season, like, he's been very useful. And like, I think that like, he gives Conte a lot of tactical solutions, which is important because Conte likes to switch around a lot.
Do you feel that he's the typical Conte player that is going to be needed in the long run at Chelsea?
Yeah, he is. He is this kind of a guy, like, you know, I don't know if you watched Juventus. Like, he had guys like Padoan, Giaccherini. So these two guys, you know, that they're not stars of the team, but they are guys who will put in a shift, who can play in a lot of positions. Someone like a Moses, you know. So Moses and Pedro, these are two guys who gives him a lot of solutions, so that when he can change his teams accordingly to suit his opposition.
Josh, do you feel that this is a different Pedro? Like, his goal at the weekend was pretty similar to what we've seen at Barcelona for many years. Do you feel that this is the different Pedro at Chelsea now compared to what we've seen at the new camp?
Yeah, I think he is. I think that's, as I said earlier, I think what Chelsea have that the other teams don't is Conte's tactics. The way he can get the best out of players who you wouldn't expect to see the best from. Pedro was hung out to dry after an awful first season in English football. Victor Moses was completely forgotten about. Marcus Alonso was known for his time at Bolton. Like, these are players that you look at and you say, hang on a minute, why them? But he's got the best out of them. He's got the players that fit his system. He's worked everyone else, and he hasn't inherited a side and just carried on and rejuvenated them, given a bit of morale. He's changed it from top to bottom, from front to back. Azpilicueta playing in the middle, as mentioned, Victor Moses and Marcus Alonso out wide. Kante's just been excellent. He's just got everything spot on, and I think that is why Chelsea are running away with the Premier League.
Interesting. I'm going to come back actually and mention about Chelsea next season, because I think that's going to be quite an interesting topic. Before we go on to that, Tom, have you seen a better free kick scored in the Premier League this season than Robbie Brady's goal on Sunday?
No, I don't think so. It was hit with power. It was hit with curl. You knew it was a goal as soon as it left his boot. It's one of them free kicks where he struck it and you just went goal instantly. I can't think of many better this season.
Burnley had a lot of chances to go on and win the game actually afterwards. I felt, especially I think Matt Lowton shot just after, maybe about 5 minutes later. But they failed to capitalise on that. But also, Sam, I'm going to bring this one back to you, being a Chelsea fan. Do you see a different Diego Costa since this apparent fallout / back injury / fine for a new deal / wanting to go to China incident a couple of weeks ago? Because he doesn't look the same player to me.
Pardon?
He doesn't look the same player to me.
No, he hasn't. I thought he was. He's been a bit greedier, and his touch has never been the best, but the ball seems to be really bouncing off him. It's hard to tell whether that's down to the new deal or not, or the attempt to get a new deal. But yeah, he doesn't look quite the same, and it's I guess is testament to how strong Chelsea are at the moment, though, that he basically hasn't been playing very well, and they've still managed to keep winning games. Well, he missed a penalty against Anfield as well, but he was pretty poor against Arsenal, I thought, and they still managed to get 3 goals. So that's kind of the strength that they're showing at the moment.
They're showing. They are. I have to agree with you. They are showing a lot of strength, but Josh, do you feel the title race could be back on following their drop points, and also other teams are really starting to gain form, 2 in particular from a particular city?
I don't think so. I think it's a little bit too late, mainly because their closest competitors, being Chelsea, being City, Arsenal and Spurs, all have the European football to contend with now. And I think that's going to play a big factor. And Man United as well, they're in a decent run, they're flying. But again, they've got the European football as well. I think the only possible danger to their form and their charge to the title is Diego Costa's poor run. Did a bit of digging beforehand and scored once in 2017. And the only time Chelsea have won when he hasn't scored this calendar year was against Arsenal, sorry. So that's a concern. But Costa is the sort of striker who can go a few games or a month or so without scoring and then completely tear it apart for the next 4 weeks. So
he's a form player.
They're probably home and dry. Yeah, for sure.
Just before we move on, Arjun, do you have to give credit to Burnley for their performance on Sunday, or do you feel that it's just another? It's almost easy to play like that at times.
I think they deserve a lot of credit, and I think that Dyche pulled one over on Conte, because Conte likes to go at his opposition. He likes to press them hard, and he likes to win the ball back and play at a very high intensity. But what Burnley did was they tried to launch the ball up and then created chances after winning the second balls. And then Conte had to adjust accordingly, so he had to drop a little deeper, and that allowed Burnley to play more football, to create chances by playing their own style. And I think that, overall, it was a great performance for them. Not so pleasing on the eye for the neutrals, but I mean, they got a draw, they got a point, so can't complain.
I think we'll all agree that the highlight of our weeks last week was Antonio Conte not knowing who Joey Barton was.
Oh, of course.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you this one as well. Sam, do you think Chelsea are going to win the league? Do you think the league is done and dusted?
Pretty much, yeah.
Tom?
Definitely.
Arjun?
Yeah, I think it's done. It's done and dusted. But like the Premier League, it's unpredictable. You don't know, because even an 8-point or a 9-point lead is pretty hard. Like it's never that conclusive, because teams they don't let you play a certain style of football, and you have to adjust according to them, and it's gonna be hard still. But I think it's virtually done.
And Josh, do you think it's done? Nobody can challenge him.
Yeah, without a doubt, it's pretty much over now. But we've known that for a while.
I disagree with every single one of you right there. And again, I'll get to it in a little while. Okay, so just after dropping that bombshell, I'm going to move on to Manchester United and Watford at the weekend. Now, many people know I'm a Man City fan, so actually watching United's recent resurgence under Mourinho was a little bit, it doesn't hit home well, but professionally, I'm going to say that credit where credit is due at Old Trafford, because it's been 3 years where they've really struggled to get the balance right, and the balance of Martial, Mata and Mkhitaryan behind Ibrahimovic seems to be working impeccably well. Tom, what do you make of this trio that is almost, I wouldn't say destroying the league, but continuing United's momentum for sure?
It's credit, it's like you said, credit where credit's due. Mkhitaryan started poorly. Martial's been hit and miss recently, and Mata, I think everyone can probably agree that when Jose was appointed, we all thought he was probably going to be sold, or at least not played. So he's come over that, and they've all played really well together. I think the big thing as well is they've linked well together. I think Mata, Mkhitaryan and Ibrahimovic in particularly are really starting to come into it as well, because Zlatan loves a bit of a, dropping deep a bit, and it allows the others just to run forward. And I think that causes havoc for defences, because a lot of defenders set up to combat Ibrahimovic, and then they've got them three running towards them. And I don't think recently a lot of teams have been able to sort it out properly.
It's interesting. Sam, the re-emergence, shall we say, of Anthony Martial, do you think that's a credit to Mourinho's testament or managerial experience and knowledge? Do you think that he was right to do what he has done to him so far?
I think it's a risk what Mourinho does, and I think each time he seems to choose to call a player out, its success rate is about 50%. It seems. I might be completely wrong on that. But as in, it seems to it's his way of challenging a player's character each time, and some react well to it. But I think quite a lot of others get a bit sick of being told they're not working hard enough or to shut up publicly. And so I get Mourinho does deserve some credit for Martial playing that well, but Mourinho should also get a bit of blame for how long it's taken him to get this squad to play this well. Ooh. They are brilliant at the moment, don't get me wrong, but it has taken him half a season to get that much talent to play that well.
Arjun, you know Pogba quite well. You're a big Juventus fan, and you weren't expecting him to leave last summer. How do you feel his impact was on games such as like Watford, and he's almost struggled at times this season? Do you feel that he can turn out to be a long-term solution for United in midfield as a midfield two? In a midfield two, I should say.
Pogba, for me, I think he is one of the best players that I've seen emerge in this century. Just in terms of what he does, natural ability, he's just amazing to watch. But his criticism is that he doesn't have focus, and like in a two-man midfield especially, you need focus because you have to carry out certain responsibilities, and I just don't think that he's mature enough to take a certain responsibility, so that what he does is he gets the ball and he tries to play his own thing, and sometimes he gives the ball away in very, very dangerous areas, or he doesn't fall back and cover his marker. So it's always risky to play him in a two-man midfield. If you do play him in a two-man midfield, you need an anchor, and that anchor is supposed to carry him. So I'm not quite sure if a two-man midfield lets him express himself that freely. I think the three-man midfield is the best case for Pogba. Like, we can see him become into one of the greatest players ever, and he has that talent, he's just 23 or 24, and he's won so much.
I find it quite staggering what you just said, and I don't mean this in any disrespect to you, but if a player who's just signed for £89 million, right? Oh no, the figure is not his fault. And you said he could be one of the best players in the world only if he plays in a three-man midfield. Lionel Messi could play anywhere across the front three. Lionel Messi could play as a lone striker. Lionel Messi could play as a 4-4 or in a 4-3-3. Do you get my point? He can play in a variation of roles, a variation of systems.
What I'm saying
it
is
shouldn't
that
take
it's
a
not that
three-man
Pogba,
midfield to get the best out of an 89 million pound player.
I mean, what I'm trying to say is that it's not that Pogba can't play in a two-man midfield. It's just that he needs more maturity to play in a two-man midfield. In a three-man midfield, he has less of a defensive responsibility and less of a responsibility to just sense danger. Like it comes with age as well, with maturity, and he's just 23 or 24. So maybe in like 2 or 3 years he gets that maturity. But right now, for him to express himself that freely, a three-man midfield is the best. Of course, like he can be more consistent throughout the game. Honestly, like he's never a player who's going to be visible throughout the 90 minutes of the game, who's going to dictate the tempo. He was never that guy. He's never going to be that guy. Like even when he was at Juventus and people were comparing him to Platini and Zidane, he was never that guy. Like, of course, like the standard is very high. But like the thing with that's the thing with Pogba. Like in his role, he's amazing. But if you ask him to do something more than what he can do, I'm not sure if he does it that well.
That's the thing at United, though, is they tried playing him sort of with the freedom in a three-man midfield, and United have looked at their best when they've had Mkhitaryan in the free role in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. The re-emergence of Mkhitaryan has, I wouldn't say saved their season, but it's been the almost kickstart of their season to.
Well, yeah, at least. I mean, he's been so good. He's not surprised because he is that good. But if he hadn't returned, Pogba would still be playing in that role, and he basically wasn't that good in that role for most of this season.
Okay, it's difficult to deny it. But one man who has flourished in it, or almost shined in his role, I should say. It's a kind of against all the odds. Josh was one matter. His goal on Saturday, another goal on Saturday. What do you make of it under Mourinho? Him under Mourinho?
I think he's answered a lot of critics. I reckon Mourinho was probably one of those critics as well. But I think the problem for Mata and for Martial as well is Jose Mourinho, and not. It's a difficult one to put across, but I just feel that both of them, no matter how well they play, they're not necessarily going to establish themselves as first choice Mourinho players for the next however many years. I mean, you look at the transfer links, and if the papers are to be believed, then Antoine Griezmann has already got his locker at Old Trafford. But
not according. Not this evening he came out and said he was quite unsure about life in England. Now he did say he's not sure whether he could adjust to life in England. Which I don't know why you'd be talking about it if there wasn't something happening, but.
Yeah, exactly, and I think
He does keep talking about it, doesn't he?
They keep on being linked to these big name players and these big expensive names, and it reminds me a lot of the Galacticos in the early 2000s. And it didn't work for them. It didn't work for Real Madrid back then. They spent a lot of money, and they had some of the best players in the world, but it didn't quite work.
Some of the greatest ever.
I think that's the same with Man United as well. Okay, at the moment they're okay, but this season, if Griezmann comes in or if Belotti comes in, all these big players that they're being linked to, if they come in, where does that leave the likes of Martial, Rashford, Mata? Luke Shaw as well is another one who seems to be hung out to dry. Like, these are young players who can be excellent in the years to come, but Man United just seem to be like, oh, okay, well, we'll spend so much on this player because we'll get so much back, and we'll fit the system around, we'll fit them into the system. That's not how football works, and I think what we were saying before about Paul Pogba working in a three-man midfield, not a two-man midfield, if you spend 90 million on a player you build the team around him and you go, okay, Paul Pogba, we spent 90 million on him, he's best in a three-man midfield, and we look at the rest of the team and we go, right, so-and-so comes in here and we fit it like that. You don't spend 90 million on a player and put him in a two-man midfield when he's vulnerable and you don't see the best out of him. It doesn't make much sense at all.
It's quite interesting, and I have to agree. It's you know what, you mentioned. I'm going to bring it back to a personal side of it. It reminds me of when Man City first broke through with all their spending. They were signing Tevez, Adebayor, Robinho, and then giving them all to Mark Hughes and like, there's your team. And you know, these players can't adapt. A lot of players, they might be great players, they might be world class players, but some players don't mix. And as you said, we've seen it with that Real Madrid team in the early 2000s. There's some of the greatest names ever to play football were in that team, but they didn't win it. They won a league title and a Champions League. What? For the money that was spent at the time, it's you're talking 150 million of today's money or market value, and that's all they won, you know. And that team is still deemed a success, a failure. So you mentioned about all these big name players potentially coming in, and the likes of Martial and Rashford missing out. Tom, there's talk today, and I especially believe it when it's coming from the Times, that Rashford is actually stalled on signing a new contract. Do you think that that's his ego starting to play in, that he's better than United, or the fact that he's, you know, as Josh said, all these names are starting to come in, his game time's going to be limited. Even under Mourinho, you know, Mourinho's not exactly renowned for keeping faith with young players.
I don't think it's his ego coming through, because every interview I've ever seen or anything I've ever read about him, he comes across as a really well level-headed kind of guy. But I think it's like you say, Griezmann's been linked for 100 million, Belotti's been linked with 100 million. All these people that have been linked and just thrown it at the wall and see what sticks. And then you've got this teenager that did well last season, and the fans are on side with because he's one of their own. And he's slowly watching all these names being linked with him. Players that are, I know he's young, but Griezmann and Belotti are both better and would easily get into the side over Rashford. It's harsh to compare, but that's the fact about it. I think he's just getting a little bit frustrated that he's not getting any game time now. He doesn't look like he's going to get any in the future, because they have this weird habit of, you know, buying a big name player because he can dab and has an emoji on Twitter, and it's that kind of, he's probably looking at it and going, I'm not going to get any game time. These players are coming in. Jose Mourinho doesn't have a track record with young players. He tried it with Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and I don't actually know. Is he still at Chelsea?
You know, his career
is still there.
Yeah, it's stalled. But could he go elsewhere and make a career out of it? Maybe. Does he even want to leave United, or will he force himself to do it just to get game time?
It's quite interesting, Sam. What do you think of it? Right? Like, you know, there's constant links with, as you said, Griezmann, Belotti. I'm off the top of my head, I can't think of many more. Neymar probably will appear again in the summer. Why would United, or more so, why would Mourinho target? Okay, I can understand them bringing in someone like Griezmann. Ibrahimovic is probably going to have one more season. Rooney's probably going to go. That's fine. But why would they try and sign players in positions that you have Martial, who I honestly believe, I don't think he'll hit the heights that Henry did, but I think that he could have a major impact on United in a similar way that Henry had on Arsenal. Why do you feel that Mourinho would want to challenge that, or at least, or maybe even try and replace it?
Well, I thought Josh was spot on earlier, though. Being a young player at United is not good anymore, other than their track record that we get told about a lot. And Mourinho, the thing with Mourinho is his default position is not to trust young players. It's been the same thing throughout his career. Whatever numbers he wants to quote, he basically, if he can find a reason not to play a young player, he will. He only ends up playing them when he's sort of been forced into it. And Martial's that good. I mean, he's one of the best young players in the world. But they're still looking to sign players to. If they sign another winger, he's hardly ever going to play. Rashford, it doesn't. If they're going to sign another striker after Ibrahimovic, Rashford should move for his career. Shaw, I think, will probably move somewhere this summer. And United have got a bit addicted to trying to sign the biggest names. And I think it's not going to work out for them best in the long run because they do have a lot of very, very good young players and they're going to end up blocking their paths to the first team.
See,
I also think with Rashford as well that the next 18 months are absolutely massive for him because he's still 19, but if he gets game time and if he carries on with how he played last season, of course he got the Euro 2016 call up last summer. If he plays well and if he has those opportunities, he could end up going to the World Cup as one of England's go-to strikers. Because at the moment we've got Harry Kane, Jamie Vardy's fallen off the wagon and stuff. There is a place there for him, but he needs the football to come and get it. So, okay, you can say in 18 months' time he's only going to be 1 year older and he'll still have 10 odd years ahead of him. But why should he hang around and wait when he had that electric season that he did last year? Why should he accept sitting on the bench? There is absolutely no reason for him to not be playing, barring obviously Ibrahimovic has been incredible, but it just doesn't make too much sense to me.
okay, look, I'm gonna actually put this in for next week, and I'm gonna make sure we pencil this in and have a good topic on this. Especially, I'm sure we're gonna hear a lot about Rashford's contract situation over the next week because Mourinho does often speak out with it at these type of stories. But moving on to another English player and another game, actually, United City rivals Man City. Last night they played Bournemouth, and from what I could see, I thought City were quite impressive. I thought that in the last 2 months since the game against Arsenal, this is a new City side. This is you're really starting to see the nucleus of a Guardiola team, but with a little bit of crap on the outside as well. Arjun, Raheem Sterling's goal. I'm not going to ask what you think of it, but what do you make of Sterling's position to be where he was at the time? Do you feel that his game is improved so much under Guardiola? Did you just see a totally different Raheem Sterling in the last couple of months even?
I personally, honestly, I think that he started the season very well. Initially, he looked very good, but then I don't know what happened to him. The problem with Sterling is he makes these really stupid mistakes. Like he gives the ball away in really bad areas, or doesn't control the ball well, or he doesn't take his chances. But I think in the last 1 month or so, he's looked really good. Him and Sane, both of them. They've really looked amazing. Sane especially against Bournemouth, he was running at the defenders and he was just amazing. Of course, like Sane, his end product he can do much better than that, but like he's one to look out for in the future. I think in the next 2 or 3 years, like you can see a star coming through.
I truly believe that Manchester City at the moment with Leroy Sané have someone to the next calibre of Gareth Bale on their hands. And you might all laugh at me, you might all think, oh, he's gone mad or whatever. But from what I can see, he is when Sané gets running at players, he's got the same build, he can score goals, he can assist, he's all left foot, he can head. I think that City in the next couple of years have a player of the capability of Gareth Bale on their hands.
I agree.
I'd agree as well.
Okay. I thought that was a bit of going to be one that was going to be shut down straight away. Sam, this City side, okay, they got a hammering against Everton. Do you see a different input on this City side? Maybe since that defeat to Leicester, since Guardiola's gone back to a back four.
Yeah, they look. You're right. They're starting to look like a Guardiola team with Alexander Kolarov at centre back. I mean, they're getting there, aren't they? Basically, and they've got Fernandinho, which is like his human utility tool, which I thought was inevitable. He was end up going to play almost everywhere on the pitch, and it's just great to have a player like that in the squad. City will be extremely strong next season. I think top four is now looking almost certain for them with the form they're on, which I can't believe considering what they look like after that Everton game.
What's interesting, when you say, okay, you speak about the Everton game, and again, this is probably something that's going to be shot down. I think this one will be, but I think City are unlucky to win to lose that game. If City had scored first in that game, the floodgates would have opened with Everton, and I think that's what's been the team's problem the whole season, is that they have not taken their chances. But however badly defensively they've not conceded that much. Actually, I'll rephrase that. However badly they have been in defence, they haven't actually been beaten that many times, as in teams have outplayed them. The only instance I can think of is when they went to White Hart Lane and Tottenham were just in every part of that pitch better than them.
Yeah.
Am I going off the mark there? Am I right saying that City are shooting themselves in the foot rather than actually being outclassed? And one game in particular that stands out is the Chelsea game.
Chelsea,
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's one or two moments within the game that changes it. It's like, say the Chelsea game. I know hindsight's a wonderful thing in this situation, but if De Bruyne doesn't sky that chance, there's probably game over, and they've probably got 3 points out of that one. But he doesn't score, and Chelsea take the impetus in that one and go on and win. I think it was little moments like that, and at the start of games, change it for City. But 9 times out of 10, it's their own doing. Whether it's a misplaced pass or a missed opportunity, it's their own. They're causing their own downfall at times.
Arjun, do you feel if City had a decent goalkeeper in goal, where else, they'd be a lot closer than 8 points behind Chelsea?
I think that's a fair case, but I think what hurt them more until maybe a month back was that they weren't taking the chances, and this has happened a lot throughout the season. It doesn't matter that much in games against the minnows or against teams of a middle stature, but against top class opposition, you're going to get punished if you don't take your chances. It also happened in the Champions League. I mean, even in the game against Barcelona, I didn't think that City deserved to lose that badly, because for like 40 minutes or something, I think City were better than Barcelona, but then the Bravo sending off, that changed things, and well.
Josh, do you think that Gabriel Jesus' injury last night, which I don't know if you've seen it, it looks like he's going to be out for at least 8 to 10 weeks. Do you feel that could derail their momentum at the moment?
No. I think that it's going to be a massive blow with the way that he's come in and played. He's been phenomenal, but they've only had him for a short while. You've still got Aguero, although he hasn't looked at his best. Came off the bench yesterday and he scored. And he's still right up there at the top of near the top of the scoring charts with what you'd say is a fairly poor season from him. And then failing that, they've got Nacho as well, who is also very good. So I think they should be able to cope. It is a big blow, and I think where it could cause them problems is the fact that when they're competing in the Champions League as well, because it takes away that the opportunity to maybe rest Aguero or rest Gabriel Jesus and mix things up a bit for the Champions League. But I still think they'll be fine. I think they've got the depth to cope.
Do you all think that City are certainty for top 4?
Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody, yeah, absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
I'm going to go one step further. And what I was mentioning earlier on when I asked about the title race being wrapped up, I don't think it is. And I'm going to give you a few reasons why. I'm going to rant here for a minute or so. Okay? 2 seasons that City have won the league, they've won it from 8 points behind with 6 games to go, and 6 points behind with 8 games to go. Okay? We're now in February with 13 games to go. City still have to go to Stamford Bridge. Bear in mind they still have to win it and everything else, and Chelsea still have to drop more points. But the nucleus of this City side knows how to win. You got your Yaya Toures, Fernandinho's, and Sergio Aguero's added with the rest. And I'm not saying Chelsea don't either, but City have a history with this. If one team is going to stop Chelsea, it's going to be City, I think. I'm not. Don't come back to me and May saying no. You said City would win the league because I'm not 100. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that, especially in the next 2 to 3 weeks, if this gap got closed down to 4 or 5 points, I think we have a real title race on our hands here. And I don't know. It's hard to knock Chelsea at the minute because they've only got almost a game a week, and as you said, the Champions League is crucial to City, and especially now with Guardiola. But Chelsea's sole focus maybe on the Premier League, but they've also got players like Costa who's starting to lose form. Kante, I hope, runs out of petrol inside that engine. You know, they've been lucky. Well, not lucky with injuries. They've been fortunate with injuries because you don't see a player get injured, but none of their main stars have got injured. I just think 1 or 2 injury. I know there's a lot of ifs and buts, but 1 or 2 injuries here and there, and we could have a real title race in our hands. And if I wasn't a Man City fan and I was a neutral, I would like it that way because only a couple of weeks ago Chelsea were steamrolling the league and it looked that way. So yeah, I think that the title race is not over until City lose another game at least, and Chelsea capitalise on that.
I think the only thing that stands against you there is that there is still a month or so to go until you go to Stamford Bridge, and I think at that point the race may already be out of your hands. Chelsea have a favourable run of games in the next 5 matches. Obviously, travelling to Stoke and travelling to West Ham won't be easy, but their other games are favourable. Whereas, Man City have got the Champions League to play against Monaco, which won't be easy.
But they're also home to Stoke and they're away to Sunderland, and then they've got one more. They're home to Liverpool, and then they're away to Chelsea. So
and they're away to Arsenal as well.
Yeah, but they're away to Arsenal, then they're away to Chelsea midweek, I should say. Sorry. Yeah.
So I just think if this game away at Chelsea had fallen in mid-March, maybe where the Stoke game is or where the Liverpool game is, something like that, I'd say, yeah, without a doubt, the title race could be back on because you can win that and then it'll be 5 points. Fine, definitely achievable. But I think there isn't enough time left in the season after that to turn things around.
Anyone got anything to add?
I think Chelsea.
Sam?
I think Chelsea basically won't concede enough goals to drop enough points. And as good as City have looked lately, I think City will still drop enough points for Chelsea not to be under that much pressure. Looking at Chelsea's remaining fixtures, City would have to win at Stamford Bridge. And then Chelsea would have to drop probably points in 3 or 4 more games. And then City be almost perfect for the rest of the season. I just can't see it happening.
Arjun?
The advantage that City have is that their suffering period is over. I think that they're more prepared to deal with a losing situation than Chelsea. Like, the thing is, Conte doesn't take a loss that well, but I just don't see him losing. It's going to be very, very hard. The thing is that Pep is just against another Pep. Conte is like Pep. So it's just going to be very hard for City to try to. I mean, if it was like 3 or 4 points, it's possible, but 8 points is very hard.
There's a lot of ifs. Okay. So I'm just gonna close off for the final 5 minutes. I'm just gonna mention a few talking points. Guys, Arsenal Bayern this week, and Wenger's decided to drop Petr Cech. Tom, do you feel that's a brave move, stupid move, or a good move?
Well, Cech hasn't exactly been in the best form recently, and a lot of fans have been calling for Ospina to start. So, what better place to start than in the Allianz Arena in the Champions League? So, I think he's always done it in the Champions League. He's always played Ospina. So, I think given the form of Cech, it might actually be a smart move. But then this time next week, we might be sitting here and going, oh, it was ridiculous, it was stupid, what were you on about? So, for the time being, I think it's a good move. Josh,
do you agree?
Yeah, I think it's a whole lot of nothing. I said at the beginning with the Alexis Sanchez handball that sometimes the press seem to want to make a controversy out of nothing. Petr Cech isn't being dropped. Ospina's played in the Champions League. He's been the first choice in the Champions League for the past 2 seasons, and it stayed that way. And there was never going to be any other outcome. There was absolutely no way he was going to drop Ospina, because there's been absolutely no reason to drop Ospina. He's done really well this season. Petr Cech hasn't. So I just think it's what accepted. When I saw that headline, was it this morning or was it yesterday morning when it came out? I can't remember.
This
morning. It was like, Arsenal to drop Star for Champions League clash. I was like, right, it's going to be about Ozil again. I seen Czech and I was like, well, it's not really dropping, is it? Like, it's
expected.
It's what we have been doing. So I don't know what all the hoo-ha was about, really.
Okay, fair enough. I have to agree. I don't think Ospina is as good a goalkeeper as Czech, but it's not, as you said, it's not a drop. He's not being dropped. It's not. It's like when that time Czech was under Mourinho. Czech used to play the cup games when he had Thibaut Courtois for that league winning season. So as you said, it's not actually a dropping. It's just standard for this sort of competition. Arjun, I'm just going to talk again about Claudio Ranieri. I know we went on a bit of a rant about him last week, and I think rightly so. Would you feel now it's now or never for him to drop his loyalty to the key players?
It should have been in the last summer. Ranieri doesn't learn, but he's this guy, he's too loyal to his players. We've seen that over the years with Juventus, Roma. It's the same thing, but I think at least now I hope that he learns that, he's given a lot of chances to his players and they've not taken it, so it's time to make some hard calls.
Sam, going into the Champions League tie with Sevilla, what happens if... Is it a bigger problem if players like Riyad Mahrez are performing well against Sevilla and then it comes to another league game and they're struggling once again?
Yes, because then it kind of proves he can't motivate them to avoid relegation. And then he has to play a different bunch of players in the league who might be interested or might not, or might just not be good enough. But I haven't changed. Unsurprisingly, losing to Swansea hasn't changed my opinion of Leicester. I think they'll probably go down, and the way it's looking, they could go down quite comfortably.
Do you well, his loyalty to the... Do you feel that it was a matter... Well, it clearly was, actually. I'm not even going to throw that question out there. It was stupid to turn around and offer Riyad Mahrez a 5-year contract. Now, not just Mahrez, I'm not just going to single him out because he's not been the only poor one. Huth, Morgan, Vardy, they've all got numerous question marks around their actual ability. But yeah, Ranieri's loyalty is a big concern at the minute. And I think that could ultimately prove the downfall of Leicester. Obviously, the loss of N'Golo Kante has been crazy, but it's not been that. He wasn't that good of a player.
No, I think that when it comes to Mahrez particularly, he's not getting the ball in the same areas that he was before. It's hard to single out individuals when a team has collapsed almost completely as a unit. Like, no one is even like half the player they were last season. So as much as individuals can be criticised, and yeah, Jamie Vardy's not finishing at a freakish rate this year. That was expected as well, but the whole team is just not functioning. And so Ranieri has to take some of the blame for that.
Okay, just want to finish off today, and it'll literally be a minute or two longer. There's a big headline this week about Liverpool banning the Sun newspaper from anything to do with the club, being anywhere near around Melwood, their training ground, Anfield, anything like that. I'm going to ask all four of you. We'll start off with you, Josh. Do you think that was... Do you think that stamped a message out to, and it should be something other clubs do as well, not just with the Sun, but what happened, figuring what happened, the history of what happened. Do you think that other clubs should start taking note, or do you feel it was an enormous over exaggeration?
I think it means a lot more to the fans and as a statement to the family than it does in general. I feel it is too late to take this action. I don't think is going to hurt the Sun at all, because in the modern media era, you don't need to be there to cover the news. You don't need to be at the press conferences. You don't need to be the match. You don't need to be at the match. So it's a difficult one. I think it is the right thing to do. I mean, what the Sun did was inexcusable, and they deserve everything that's coming to them.
But it was 28 years ago with a journalist who's probably even retired now. Do you think it's?
I know.
Do you think it's harsh to throw that stigma out even now? I know they have their track record of being somewhat a bit unhumane and morally wrong, but when you take those factors into consideration, do you still think it was the right decision?
I think that what makes it the right decision still is that when the results of the inquest came out, when they did last year or whenever it was, the Sun nor the Times had it on their front pages, and that made absolutely no sense whatsoever, because it was the biggest piece of the news at the time. So the Sun, obviously, even though they've issued an apology and even though they're trying to take the high ground, it's too late to take the high ground at the end of the day. And they shown by not covering the inquest as they should have done that they still kind of want to pretend it didn't happen at the end of the day. And I'm quite big on history. I studied history all the way through to A-level and stuff, and I know that history has a trend of repeating itself, and that can't happen. And the way that you make sure that doesn't happen is you don't give those sort of opportunities. So now, no newspaper daren't lie. I think, and that's a good thing for fans. It's a good thing for the papers. It's a good thing for the club. That newspapers now need to be wary of what they report, because if it is a load of rubbish, the club can, and rightly so, wield the hammer and say, right, you're not coming anymore. But then on the same time, the papers and the rest of the media can deal with it because of the way the modern media is.
Okay, I just forgot to actually mention, just for anybody who is unsure of what actually happened, I think it was the day after the Hillsborough incident when 96 Liverpool fans were crushed in the FA Cup semi-final. The Sun published a front page exclusive, if I'm not mistaken, stating that supporters were seen taking wallets, keys and phones out of the pockets of the dead, I'm
sure there was
deceased.
Also suggestions that they were urinating on
That's
the bodies.
Right, yes, that's correct. That they were taking their personal belongings out of their pockets and stealing them while they were lying dead. And also, as Josh said, that there was other supporters then that were decided to urinate in them. It was all completely false. The Sun have apologised. It was false. So that, and following that now, when the inquest that came out last year, that Liverpool fans were proven not guilty of any misdemeanours, that Liverpool have decided to take the action and banning the Sun from anything to do with the club. Tom, do you feel that it was a right decision that Liverpool did?
I think ultimately yes. I mean, it's a hard subject to talk about because it's so personal to so many different people. It's unfortunately dragged on since the incident itself, but it was a move to put the fans at mind, I think, a peaceful mind. And some would argue they should have done it earlier, or what have you, but ultimately I think it was the right decision.
Arjun, if you were a Liverpool fan, would you be happy with the decision?
Yeah, as a fan, I think it makes sense, and it also shows that that the club makes an effort to connect with the fans a lot more. So I think it's the right move. Although I wouldn't want to be a Liverpool fan, but that's another thing. I mean, it's just that we have a history with Liverpool, and it's not good with Hazel and things like that. So
that's another show completely. Anyway,
yeah.
Sam, I'll give the final word to you. Do you think other clubs should start taking notes on what I know the extremity of it won't be similar, but do you think other clubs should start taking notes of what Liverpool just did with the Sun for ultimately publishing lies?
it almost impossible for another paper to do something quite as disgusting as what the Sun did. But the trouble with the Sun is it's not just the Hillsborough thing in general for why people should not necessarily want it to be associated with a football club. So I'm not sure if other clubs will be able to take such a step, or if they necessarily should, because they then damage themselves ultimately, and that's why clubs will not do it very quickly. Clubs, the minute they ban a newspaper or an organisation from going to their training ground or their stadium, they're probably going to get quite a lot of bad press from that outlet. But I completely understand Liverpool doing it. I think it was a matter of time. I'm surprised that they didn't do it before, but I guess they probably had to wait for the outcome of the inquest. But it was inevitable, and it's completely right of them to do it, and I completely understand the decision.
I think it is also worth mentioning that clubs refusing to speak to a particular media outlet isn't anything new. You had
Ferguson,
all those years with Ferguson didn't speak to the BBC. I think that this has got a lot more coverage than it usually would, because of the Hillsborough thing. I think that clubs refusing to speak to a particular outlet or journalist isn't anything new, and it's it happens quite regularly in football.
That's true, but I guess they're often, the Ferguson thing was at least, well, with Ferguson it wasn't because he was around so bloody long, but it was often semi-permanent or temporary, or it seemed like that, I guess, with Liverpool. Yeah. This is very much a blanket ban, don't come anywhere near us ever, which is obviously understandable.
I don't know if you guys know this, but in 1982, the Italian national team, they decided to go on a press silence in the World Cup, because the Italian press, they created false rumors about Rossi and Cabrini being gay and sleeping together and having a lot of drugs and drinks, because Italy didn't start well, so they spread a lot of false rumors. And
wasn't Rossi banned for substance abuse prior to the '82 World Cup?
Rossi? No, it was because of Toto Nero. It was a match fixing scandal.
Oh, match fixing. Excuse me, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, it was because of that. So he only started to play 2 or 3 games before the World Cup, and he was a target for the press right from the start, and so they started spreading rumors that he was gay with Cabrini and other things. And so Enzo Biazon, he just decided that he sat with the members of the national team and he decided to ban all press. So it still happens. That's when the Silenzio came about, and it still happens in Italy even till today. I think Napoli do it a lot. They go on a press silence every now and then.
So who knows? You know what happened afterwards in the '82 World Cup? Italy went on to win the World Cup. So Liverpool.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
It might be your year next year. You've been saying it for the last 27 years, so I wouldn't hold your breath on that. But we'll see what happens, guys. You've been fantastic. It's been really enjoyable once again. It's episode 2 of the Sportskeeda Football Show. Thank you all once again for coming and joining me this evening and having a good chat. I hope all our listeners enjoyed it. We'll be back again next week, and hopefully some of the guys will come back again to us and have a good chat about the next weekend's action. In fact, it's actually FA Cup weekend next weekend, and we'll talk a little bit about Champions League, etc. So you know where we'll be. We'll be on the same place, same time, same people, same bat channel. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Shane Burns. Have a good evening. Good night.